Everyone ignored the Arab billionaire, but the black maid's words in Arabic left everyone in shock. "Sir, this establishment has a certain standard." The manager pronounced the word standard like it was poison, eyes slowly scanning the wrinkled jacket, worn suitcase, tired face of the man before him. "Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at the Quality Inn, about 20 miles down the road." He said it loud enough for the entire Pinnacle Grand Hotel lobby to hear. Khalid al-Rashid, 58 years old, stood motionless in the middle of the Italian marble floor, feeling 50 pairs of eyes on him. The lobby smelled of money and judgment, expensive perfume, fresh flowers changed daily, and that indefinable scent of people who'd never needed to question whether they belonged somewhere. He didn't belong. At least, not in appearance. His beige jacket was creased from 18 hours of travel, Dubai to London, London to New York to here, Colorado Rockies, where mountains touched sky like giants' fingers. His black Samsonite suitcase was 20 years old, bought when he was still building his first hotel with his own hands. His gray hair needed cutting. His stubble suggested a man who'd slept in airports. And his English, though functional, carried an accent that made people repeat words slowly, as if he were a child. "I have reservation," Khalid said carefully, each word placed like a stone across a stream. "Confirmation number I show." The manager, his badge said, Todd Morrison, General Manager, sighed with theatrical impatience. "Sir, I've already explained. We have nothing under your name. Perhaps you've confused hotels." He hadn't confused anything. Khalid knew exactly where he was. He'd memorized every detail of this place before boarding the plane. The Pinnacle Grand, luxury property with 287 rooms, 5-star rating, recently renovated for $40 million, crown jewel of Summit Hospitality Group. The company he'd secretly purchased 3 months ago. But nobody knew that yet. Not even lawyers had completed the transfer. Not the board of directors had been informed. Not the 8,400 employees across 17 countries had any idea that the new owner was traveling incognito, personally checking how hotels treated guests when they thought no one important was watching. Now he knew. "Please," Khalid tried again, reaching for the jacket pocket where he'd kept the confirmation email. "I show." "Sir," Todd interrupted him, voice gaining a sharp edge, "you're creating a scene. Either you leave voluntarily, or I call security." Behind Khalid, someone laughed. Male laughter, cruel, cutting through the air like glass. He didn't turn around. He'd learned long ago that acknowledging mockery only encouraged it. It was 2:30 p.m. on a Thursday. The lobby was packed, guests checking in after a corporate conference, wealthy families arriving for early ski weekend, executives with laptops and expressions of superiority. And all of them watching a middle-aged Arab man being publicly humiliated. Khalid had felt this before. That specific sensation of being invisible and hypervisible simultaneously. Invisible as a person, as a human being with feelings and dignity. Hypervisible as a stereotype, as something to be feared or despised or at best, tolerated with condescension. He was 58 years old. He'd built a hospitality empire starting with a single 20-room hotel in Dubai. Now he owned 73 properties on 4 continents. He directly employed 15,000 people. He donated $80 million to charity in the last year, hospitals, schools, refugee programs. And at this moment, none of it mattered because Todd Morrison had looked at him and decided in 30 seconds that he wasn't worth anyone's time. "Is there a problem here?" A new voice, female, coming from the reception desk. A woman about 40 years old, perfectly arranged blonde hair, Chanel suit, expression of someone who'd smelled something unpleasant. "Just a confused gentleman, Mrs. Patterson," Todd replied. "Already being resolved." Mrs. Patterson, probably assistant manager or director of operations, examined Khalid from head to toe. Her gaze stopped at the worn suitcase, the shabby shoes, the wrinkled jacket. "I see," she said, tone making it clear she understood perfectly. "Is security on the way?" "Not necessary yet," Todd replied. "I'm sure the gentleman here will understand he's made a mistake." Khalid felt something tighten in his chest. Not anger exactly. Something deeper. Hurt. The specific hurt of being reduced to nothing, judged and discarded based purely on appearance. He thought of his son, Tariq, 28 years old, studying hotel management in Lausanne. He thought of his daughter, Layla, 25 years old, working in a UN refugee program in Geneva. He thought of his wife, Nadia, who died 2 years ago of cancer, and who always said, "Khalid, no matter how much money we have, never forget what it was like to have nothing." He'd never forgotten. That's why he was here. "Can I use phone?" Khalid asked calmly. "Call office, resolve confusion." "Sir," Todd said, patience clearly exhausted, "unless you have valid reservation confirmation, I need to ask you to leave. We have real guests waiting to check in." Real guests. The words hung in the air like smoke. That's when Khalid noticed the woman. Not because she'd made noise or drawn attention, but because she was the only person in the entire lobby who wasn't looking at him with disdain or morbid curiosity or cruel amusement. She was near the restaurant doors, holding a cleaning cart. A black woman, probably late 30s, wearing a simple gray employee uniform, pants, polo shirt, apron with hotel logo. Hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Face showing the exhaustion that came from working too many hours for too little money. And she was looking at Khalid not with pity, but with something more. Recognition. As if she saw in him something no one else could see. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second. She nodded slightly, an almost imperceptible gesture. Then she did something that would change everything. She left her cleaning cart and walked directly across the marble lobby, past wealthy guests, past staff who ignored her, until she stood a few feet from Khalid. And said, in perfect Arabic, clear and precise Levantine dialect, "Assalamu alaikum, Sayyidi. Hal turiyadu muzaadati." "Peace be upon you, sir. Do you need help?" The silence that followed was absolute. Khalid froze. For a complete moment, he forgot to breathe. It wasn't just the words, though hearing his own language in such a hostile place was like finding an oasis in the desert. It was how she'd spoken. The formal respect. The specific Damascus dialect. The pronunciation that only came from someone who'd grown up hearing the language, living the language. You speak Arabic?" He whispered, instinctively switching to his native language, voice hoarse with emotion. She smiled. Not a professional smile like the ones plastered on Todd's and Mrs. Patterson's faces. It was a real smile, tired but genuine, that reached the eyes. "Naam Sayyidi," she replied softly. "Ana min Syria Aslan." "Yes, sir. I'm originally from Syria." Syria. The word hit Khalid like a wave. He knew Syria. He'd visited Damascus dozens of times before the war. He knew people who'd lost everything when the conflict erupted. He knew refugees who were rebuilding lives from ashes. "How did you?" He began, then stopped, realizing that the entire lobby was watching this exchange with expressions ranging from confusion to discomfort. Todd Morrison had paled slightly. Mrs. Patterson was frowning, clearly irritated that a cleaning employee had interrupted. "Excuse me," the woman said now in English, turning to Todd, "my name is Amira Hassan. I work in the cleaning department. I heard there was confusion with this gentleman's reservation. Can I help translate if necessary?" If you're beginning to understand that this story about judgment and unexpected kindness is going places you might not imagine, don't miss the next moments, and subscribe to the channel to discover how a single phrase in Arabic will become the catalyst for justice no one saw coming. Todd Morrison looked at Amira as if she'd just grown a second head. "Hassan, you should be on the 5th floor finishing rooms. This isn't your concern." "I understand, Mr. Morrison," Amira replied calmly, maintaining a respectful posture but not moving. "But if there's a language barrier causing a problem, I can resolve it quickly." "There's no language barrier," Mrs. Patterson interrupted, voice icy. "There's a lack of valid reservation. Now get back to work before this becomes a disciplinary matter." Khalid saw something pass across Amira's face, a quick flash of pain, of fear, of resignation. She needed this job. It was obvious from the worn uniform, the practical but cheap shoes, the way her shoulders curved slightly under the threat. But she didn't step away. Instead, she turned to Khalid again and said in Arabic, voice low but firm, "Sayyidi, hal ladayka rakm al-taqaid?" "Sir, do you have a confirmation number?" "Naam," Khalid replied, gratitude flooding his chest. "Fi hatify, lakin." "Yes, on my phone, but..." He pulled his cell phone from his pocket with hands that trembled slightly, not from nervousness, but from emotion he was fighting to control. 18 hours of travel. Public humiliation. And this woman, this stranger who owed him nothing, was risking her own job to help him. Amira waited patiently while he scrolled through emails. When he finally found the confirmation, she read the number aloud to Todd in perfect English. Confirmation 7-7-4-2-9BK. Reserved under the name Khalid Al-Rashid for Executive Suite, 14 nights starting today. Todd typed reluctantly into the computer, frowning. His fingers stopped. The frown deepened. He clicked several times, leaning closer to the screen. "There's nothing here," he said finally, but there was a new hesitation in his voice. "May I see?" Amira asked gently. "Absolutely not," Mrs. Patterson intervened. "You don't have authorization to access the reservation system. Mr. Morrison, this has gone too far. Hassan, you're suspended for insubordination. Hand over your badge and await a meeting with HR on Monday." Suspended. The word hung in the air. Khalid saw Amira close her eyes briefly, jaw tightening. When she opened her eyes again, tears glistened at the edges, but she blinked quickly. "Yes, ma'am," she said quietly. "No," Khalid said, voice coming out stronger than he'd intended. He looked at Mrs. Patterson directly. "She tried to help. Is that a crime?" "Sir," Mrs. Patterson said with exaggerated patience that adults use with children, "you don't understand how luxury hotels work. We have protocols. Hierarchies. A cleaning employee doesn't interfere in reception operations." "Then who will help?" Khalid asked. "You? Did you try?" Embarrassed silence. That's when a man approached the group, one of the guests who'd been waiting in line. A white man, maybe 45 years old, Armani suit that probably cost more than Amira's monthly salary, Rolex watch catching the light from the chandeliers. "Excuse me for interrupting," he said, smile that didn't reach his eyes, "but I'm late for an important meeting. Could we resolve this more quickly by simply calling security?" Murmurs of approval from other guests in line. Todd looked relieved by the intervention. "Of course, Mr. Whitmore. My sincere apologies for the delay." He grabbed his radio. "Security to main lobby, please." Khalid felt the reality of the situation sink in. They were going to forcibly expel him. In front of dozens of witnesses. A 58-year-old man who'd built his entire life on principles of hospitality and dignity, about to be escorted out like a vagrant. "Wait," Amira said suddenly. She looked at Khalid, switching to Arabic again. "Sayyidi, halhadha al-hatif huwa al-hatif aladi tastamiluhu lil-amal." "Sir, is this phone the one you use for work?" Khalid blinked. "La, hada hatifi ash-shaksi." "No, this is my personal one." "Wa hatif al-amal." "And work phone." Understanding hit him like lightning. Of course. His assistant, Farah, had made the reservation using the corporate phone. The confirmation email had probably gone to the corporate account, not personal. "Fi hakabati, Lakin." "In my suitcase, but," he hesitated. The corporate phone would reveal everything. His entire operation of traveling incognito depended on no one knowing who he really was. Amira must have seen the hesitation because she said gently in Arabic, "Sayyidi, hum la yastazunak. Tadhab bila karama atarif nafsak. Iktiyara halak." "Sir, they don't respect you. Leave without dignity or identify yourself. The choice is yours." The words penetrated deeply. She understood. Not just the superficial situation, but the deeper dilemma. He could reveal his identity now, use power to crush these people. Or he could leave, maintain anonymity, but carry this humiliation. Two security guards appeared, large men in dark uniforms, neutral expressions but posture suggesting they'd done this many times before. "Gentlemen," Todd said, gesturing to Khalid, "this man needs to be escorted off the property." "Understood," one of the guards said, taking a step toward Khalid. It was at that moment that Amira did something extraordinary. She positioned herself between Khalid and the security guard. "Please," she said in English, voice firm despite being visibly trembling, "give him 1 minute. Just 1 minute to find his confirmation. That's all I ask." "Hassan," Todd hissed, "you're already suspended. Do you want to be fired?" "If necessary," Amira replied quietly, but didn't move. Khalid was paralyzed. This woman, this stranger who didn't know him, who gained nothing from this, who was sacrificing her own livelihood, was literally placing herself between him and humiliation. Why? He whispered to her in Arabic. Lamada tefeliina hada li ajli. Why are you doing this for me? She looked at him, and in her eyes Khalid saw something he immediately recognized. Pain. The specific pain of being invisible, of being judged by appearance, of being discarded as if you didn't matter. Lianani Arif Kaifa Yabdu Alayamar Indama La Yaraka Rahad, she said softly. Because I know what it's like when no one sees you. Tears burned in Khalid's eyes for the first time in 2 years. Since Nadia's funeral. Mr. Morrison. A voice cut through the moment, a different receptionist, young woman with braces, running from behind the counter. Sir, I found it. The reservation was under a different name in the system. Khalid al-Rashid registered as K. Rahman for privacy. It's standard VIP protocol, but someone forgot to put a note. Absolute silence descended over the lobby. Todd Morrison froze, hands still on the radio. Mrs. Patterson visibly paled. Even the security guards exchanged uncomfortable looks. VIP. Todd repeated weakly. Yes, sir, the receptionist said, reading the screen. Presidential suite, not executive. Reserved by Al-Rashid Holdings Corporation with a corporate card. Special instructions for maximum discretion. Presidential suite. The most expensive in the hotel. $3,500 per night. Mr. Whitmore, the man in the Armani suit who'd asked for security, took a step back, discomfort clear on his face. Khalid watched the processing happen. He saw Todd and Mrs. Patterson recalculating, reassessing, realizing the magnitude of their mistake. But he didn't speak. He just waited, feeling Amira still beside him, silent presence of solidarity. Mr. Al-Rashid, Todd began, voice transformed into oily honey, please accept my deepest apologies for this terrible misunderstanding. Surely you understand, with security protocols being what they are. Security protocol? Amira interrupted gently, finally stepping away from her protective position. Or judgment protocol. Mrs. Patterson turned to her, fury barely contained. Hassan, you're still suspended. Leave now before this gets worse. No, Khalid said, voice calm but carrying authority that made everyone stop. She stays. He looked directly at Todd Morrison. I want to speak with the owner of this hotel. Todd exchanged a look with Mrs. Patterson. Sir, the owner isn't available for guest consultations. I can assure you the matter will be resolved under my supervision. Then call him, Khalid said. Now. There was something in his tone, quiet but inflexible, that made Todd hesitate. The manager clearly wasn't used to being challenged like this. Mr. Al-Rashid, it's really not necessary to bother. Call the owner, Khalid repeated. Or I will. The lobby had become a silent theater. Everyone witnesses to this confrontation. Todd finally nodded stiffly. Very well. Let me make the call from the office. As he walked away, Amira gently touched Khalid's arm and whispered in Arabic, Sayyidi shukran laka ala al-Daifani. Lakin la turid, antawuda watsafati. Ana bike hair. Sir, thank you for defending me. But you don't need to risk my job. I'm fine. Khalid looked at her, this woman who'd risked everything for a stranger, who'd offered dignity when no one else would, and made a decision. Anti-lasti bike hair, he said softly. Waese akunu mutakadan min dalik. You're not fine. And I'm going to make sure you are. Because what no one there knew yet, not Todd, not Mrs. Patterson, not the security guards, not Mr. Whitmore, not the dozens of watching guests, was that in 48 hours, the transfer would be finalized. And Khalid al-Rashid would become the official owner not just of this hotel, but of every property of Summit Hospitality Group, including the job of every person in this lobby. Todd Morrison returned after 15 minutes, face pale as the marble floor. Behind him came an older man, maybe 60 years old, bald, impeccable gray suit, expression of someone who dealt with corporate crises before breakfast. Mr. Al-Rashid, the man extended his hand, professional smile but calculating eyes. I'm Richard Chin, Regional Director of Summit Hospitality. I understand there's been an unfortunate confusion. Khalid shook his hand, noting how Chin evaluated every detail, wrinkled jacket, worn suitcase, stubble. He saw the exact fraction of a second when Chin decided that, despite the presidential suite, this guest didn't deserve genuine concern. Confusion, Khalid repeated slowly. Interesting word. Well, Chen gave a light laugh. System error, really. Our staff was simply following protocol in verifying proper identification. I'm sure you understand, in current times, we can't be too careful. With Arab men especially? Khalid asked quietly. Uncomfortable silence. Chen cleared his throat. I certainly didn't mean to imply. Well, I see you're tired from travel. Let me personally escort you to the suite. And naturally, your first night is on us, as apologies. One night, Khalid said. For 14 days of reservation. Generous. Chen looked slightly irritated, but maintained his smile. Mr. Al-Rashid, I'm doing everything possible to remedy the situation. And her. Khalid gestured to Amira, who remained slightly apart, eyes down. The employee who actually tried to help. What happens to her? Chen looked at Amira as if seeing her for the first time. Ah yes. Mrs. Patterson mentioned there was overzealousness on the part of cleaning staff. Overzealousness, Khalid repeated. She was suspended for showing kindness. Mr. Al-Rashid, Chen said, tone becoming slightly condescending, I appreciate your concern, but personnel matters are internal business. Hassan here violated multiple protocols by speaking Arabic. Khalid interrupted. By translating? By treating a guest with respect. By leaving her workstation without permission, Chen corrected firmly. By accessing the reception area where she has no authorization. By interrupting management during conflict resolution. He turned to Amira, voice hardening. Hassan, the suspension stands. 3 days without pay. Report goes in your file. One more occurrence and there'll be an employment review. Understood. Amira nodded silently, but Khalid saw her hands trembling slightly. No, he said. Chen blinked. Excuse me. I said no. She won't be punished. Mr. Al-Rashid, Chen said, patience clearly running out. With all respect, employee management isn't your concern. Now if you prefer, I can upgrade you to our Imperial suite. I want to see this hotel's ownership contract, Khalid said abruptly. Everyone stopped. Chen frowned. Pardon. Legal ownership documentation. Corporate structure. Who owns Summit Hospitality Group? Chen laughed, genuinely amused. Mr. Al-Rashid, that's confidential corporate information. I can't simply. Then I can, Khalid said calmly. He pulled a second phone from the inner pocket of his jacket. Not the personal Samsung he'd shown before, but a corporate iPhone with a discreet black case. He dialed a number from memory. Put it on speakerphone. 3 rings. Then a female voice answered, speaking rapid Arabic. Naam, Syed Al-Rashid? Yes, Mr. Al-Rashid. Farah, Halak Multi-Itamam Safkat Summit? Farah, did you complete the summit deal? Naam, Sayyidi. Wakana Jamie, Al-Arak Kabla Saa. Al-Tashal Al-Kanuni Syakdamil Yom Alithnain. Yes, sir. We signed all documents an hour ago. Legal registration will complete Monday. Khalid looked directly at Richard Chun. Mumtaz. Hal Yumkin Irsal Nuskamin Wathal IQ Al Mulkiya Ilabaridi Al Electroni. Excellent. Can you send a copy of the ownership documents to my email? Halan, Sayyidi. Right now, sir. He hung up. The silence in the lobby was so complete you could hear the air conditioning system whispering through the ducts. Chen had lost all color from his face. What did you just say? I spoke with my executive assistant, Khalid replied calmly, switching back to English. Confirming finalization of Summit Hospitality Group acquisition. Negotiation that began 7 months ago. Concluded today at 1 p.m. East Coast time. Legal registration completes Monday. Todd Morrison made a strangled sound. Mrs. Patterson grabbed the reception counter for stability. Impossible, Chen whispered. Summit is privately owned. It's not for sale. It was, Khalid said. Original founder, William Hartley, 84 years old, no interested heirs. He approached me discreetly last year. After months of due diligence, we reached an agreement. He paused, letting the information sink in. Al Rashid Holdings now owns 100% of Summit Hospitality Group shares, including this hotel and 72 others in 17 countries. Employment contracts of 8,400 employees, including all of you. Chen's phone rang. He looked at the screen, face turning gray. It's corporate headquarters in New York, he murmured. I suggest answering, Khalid said gently. Chen answered with a trembling hand. Chen here. Pause. Yes. Yes, ma'am. Longer pause, during which his face went through a complete journey from denial to understanding to pure panic. I understand. Yes. Immediately. He hung up slowly. When he spoke, his voice came out hoarse. That was the board of directors. Confirming ownership transfer. They said you're traveling incognito for personal inspections. Correct, Khalid said. And that we should cooperate completely with any request. Also correct. Chen swallowed hard. Mr. Al-Rashid, we had no idea. If we'd known you were. Was what? Khalid interrupted, voice still calm but carrying a sharp edge now. Rich? Powerful? Important? And because of that, I deserve respect. No one answered. I came here, Khalid continued, as an ordinary man. Tired, poorly dressed, imperfect English. Exactly like thousands of guests who stay at our hotels every year. International visitors. Immigrants. Refugees. People who work hard and save for years for one night in a decent hotel. He gestured around the lobby. And is this how they were treated? How I was treated. Like trash to be swept away. Todd Morrison tried to speak. Sir, You told me to look for a motel miles down the road, Khalid said, voice still low but each word falling like a hammer. Because you decided in one look that I didn't belong here. He turned to Mrs. Patterson. And you threatened to fire the only person who showed compassion. Finally, he looked at Mr. Whitmore, the man in the Armani suit who'd asked for security. Whitmore tried to back away discreetly, but Khalid called him. Sir, in a hurry for an important meeting. What's your name? I don't need to. Your name, Khalid repeated. Whitmore. Daniel Whitmore. Mr. Whitmore, what do you do professionally? Whitmore hesitated. I'm an executive at a pharmaceutical company. Then you understand corporate protocols. Professional ethics. Khalid paused. And yet you suggested calling security against a guest who was simply trying to check in. Why? I was late, and it seemed like the situation was. It seemed like an Arab man was causing trouble, Khalid finished for him. Better remove him quickly before he caused a scene. Whitmore opened his mouth, closed it, couldn't find words. Khalid felt the weight of 3 weeks of pain, his nephew's betrayal, loss of trust, questioning his own judgment about people. Part of him wanted to use this moment to crush these people, make them suffer as he'd suffered. But then he felt a light hand on his arm. Amira, touching him gently, saying something in Arabic so low only he heard. Sayyidi, al-intikam sayujriyuam. Al-karama sathilika. Sir, revenge will hurt them. Dignity will elevate you. He looked at her, this woman who still wore a cleaning uniform, who was still officially suspended, who still didn't know her life was about to change completely. And she was right. Khalid took a deep breath. Mr. Chun, do you have paper and pen? Chun, confused but cooperative, offered a notepad from the counter. Khalid wrote quickly, then tore off the page and handed it back. I want you to call these numbers. First is my corporate human resources director. Second is my legal director. Third is president of hotel operations. Chun looked at the numbers with growing dread. Tell them, Khalid continued, that I'm at Pinnacle Grand Hotel. That I personally witnessed multiple violations of hospitality policies and discrimination against a guest. And that I'll be implementing immediate changes in all Summit properties, starting here. What kind of changes? Chen whispered. Khalid didn't respond immediately. Instead, he turned to Amira, switching to Arabic. Amira, Kabla Saba Sanawat, Matagarakti Syria? Amira, 7 years ago, when did you leave Syria? She blinked, surprised by the question. 2018. In Damabadu at Al-Harb Tazdiyu Soan. 2018. When the war started getting worse. Wama kuntu tamaliina huna. And what did you do there? Kuntu mudarrisatan lil luga al-inglizia fi Dimashq. I was an English teacher in Damascus. Teacher. Of course. That explained her perfect English. That explained the way she carried herself, a mixture of education and exhaustion. Wa alon tanazafina al-guruf. And now you clean rooms. Tears filled her eyes. Sayyidi, Fayam Raika, Shahadati la Kaimalaha. Walagashi al-Arabiya. Nas yakafuna minha. Sir, in America, my degrees are worthless. And my Arabic language, people are afraid of it. Khalid felt something tighten in his heart. This woman, educated, multilingual, forced to leave her country by war, rebuilding her life from zero, working a job that completely wasted her talents. Because people looked at her and saw only a cleaning maid. He turned back to Chen. First change starts now. Amira Hassan is being promoted. Promoted. Chen repeated weakly. Yes. To Director of Cultural Relations and Multilingual Hospitality Services. Salary $75,000 per year. Office in this hotel. Responsible for training all staff in cultural sensitivity and respect for international guests. Amira gasped, hand flying to cover her mouth. Additionally, Khalid continued, Al-Rashid Holdings will pay for her continuing education. If she wants to complete American certifications to resume teaching career, we'll pay. If she wants to study hotel management, we'll pay. The choice is hers. Sir, I can't, Amira began in English, voice breaking. You can, Khalid said firmly. And you will. Because you deserve it. Because you're exactly the kind of person I want representing my company. He paused, then added in Arabic, Waliyanaki wakafti by Janibi in Damalam Yafe Alahad. And because you stood by my side when no one else did. Tears flowed freely down Amira's face now. She tried to speak, failed, then simply placed her hand over her heart in a traditional gesture of deep gratitude that needed no words. Khalid nodded to her, then returned his attention to Chun. Second change. I want a complete review of hiring practices at all Summit properties. How many of our 8,400 employees are immigrants? How many are refugees? How many have degrees from countries of origin that aren't recognized here? Chun looked lost. I don't have those numbers. Then get them. By Friday. Because I bet we have hundreds of Amiras. Qualified people, educated, talented, stuck in positions far below their capacities because their papers say wrong birthplace. He paused, letting the weight of that sink in. We're going to change that. Credential recognition program. Language training. Promotion pathways for staff of any origin. Not charity. Justice. Richard Chen opened and closed his mouth several times. Finally he managed to say, that will cost millions in restructuring. Then we spend millions, Khalid replied simply. Last quarter's profit was 340 million. We can invest in people. He turned to Todd Morrison, who looked like he wanted to melt into the marble floor. Mr. Morrison, 49 years old, how long have you worked here? 6 years, Todd said in a barely audible voice. 6 years. General Manager. How much do you earn? 120,000 a year? 150,000. 135,000. Good salary. Good benefits, I imagine. And in 6 years, how many times have you treated guests like you treated me today? Silence. Answer, Khalid insisted gently. I don't keep track. That's not fair, Todd finally said, defensiveness bleeding through his voice. It's not fair. Khalid repeated. Mr. Morrison, you know what's not fair? A family saving all year for a special vacation. They arrive tired, excited, maybe English not perfect, maybe clothes not expensive enough for your taste. And you judge them in 30 seconds. You make them feel small. Unworthy. Like trash. I never, Todd began. Never. Khalid's voice finally rose, not shouting, but carrying the weight of decades of experience being judged, being underestimated, being treated as less than human. You literally told me to look for a motel miles down the road. In front of everyone. What was that, if not making me feel like trash? Todd had no answer. Khalid took a deep breath, regaining control. You're fired. Effective immediately. You'll receive 2 months severance as per contract, but you'll never work at an Al-Rashid property again. Todd paled completely. Sir, please, I have a family mortgage, Did you have a family and mortgage when you humiliated me? Khalid asked. Did you think of them before publicly suggesting I didn't belong here? It was a misunderstanding, Todd tried desperately. The reservation was under a different name, I was just protecting the hotel, Khalid finished. From people like me. People who don't look right. Don't speak right. Don't dress right. He turned to Mrs. Patterson. And you? How long here? 9 years, she whispered. 9 years. Director of Operations. And your first reaction was to threaten to fire Amira for showing kindness. For doing exactly what a hospitality brand should do, help a guest in need. Mrs. Patterson opened her mouth, but no words came out. 3-day suspension, Khalid said. Without pay. After that, removal from managerial position. You can keep employment as floor supervisor, but never again in a position of authority over other employees. That's a demotion, she protested weakly. Yes. It is. Learn what it feels like to be treated as less important. Maybe you'll develop empathy. Khalid then looked around the lobby at the watching faces, guests, employees, all witnesses to this explosive transformation of power. His gaze landed on Mr. Whitmore, who was trying to make himself invisible near the marble column. Mr. Whitmore, Khalid called him. Don't leave yet. Whitmore froze. I really need to. Your meeting can wait, Khalid said firmly. I want you to understand something. You asked for security because you were late. Because your convenience mattered more than another human being's dignity. I didn't mean. Didn't mean what? Didn't mean to judge? Didn't mean to assume? Didn't mean to reduce a man you didn't know to a problem to be removed. Whitmore looked physically ill. I apologize. It was poor judgment. It was more than that, Khalid said. It was a choice. A choice to see another human being as an obstacle instead of a person. He paused, then added, and now you have a choice. You can leave here and continue your life without thinking twice about this moment. Or you can consider how many other times you've made choices like this. How many people you've judged. How many small pains you've caused because you were rushed, or bothered, or simply didn't care enough to see someone's humanity. Whitmore didn't respond, but something in his face suggested the words had hit their target. Khalid turned back to Richard Chun. Mr. Chun, I presume you understand the gravity of everything you witnessed here. Yes, sir, Chun said quickly. Absolutely. I'll implement changes immediately. You're not understanding, Khalid interrupted. I'm not asking you to implement changes. I'm saying you're also being transferred. Chun paled. Transferred. To our corporate office in Dubai. Same position, same salary, but away from direct guest operations. I need to know that people in command understand the values this company will represent. You just demonstrated you don't understand. Sir, please, my family is here, my children are in school. Then you have 3 months to decide, Khalid said, not without compassion but firmly. Move to Dubai or seek employment elsewhere. But you won't continue supervising hotels where your first instinct is to protect management instead of guests. Chin closed his eyes, defeated. It was then that the young receptionist, the one with braces who'd found the reservation, took a hesitant step forward. Mr. Al-Rashid. Her voice trembled. Can I say something? Khalid nodded. I saw everything. I saw how Mr. Morrison treated you. How Mrs. Patterson treated Amira. And I did nothing. Tears filled her eyes. I stood there and did nothing because I was afraid of losing my job. And that makes me just as bad as them. What's your name? Khalid asked gently. Sophie. Sophie Chun, 23 years old. Not related to Mr. Chun, she added quickly. Sophie, Khalid said, the fact that you recognize this, That you care enough to be ashamed means there's hope for you. Fear of losing a job is real. I won't punish that. But I will give you responsibility. He paused. For the next 6 months, you'll be mentored by Amira. You'll learn how to treat all guests with dignity. And after that, if you prove capable, you'll be considered for promotion to assistant manager. Sophie sobbed openly. Thank you. Thank you, sir. I swear I won't disappoint you. Khalid then did something that surprised everyone. He walked to Amira's cleaning cart, still parked near the restaurant where she'd left it, and picked up a cleaning cloth from the top. Do you see this? He held up the cloth. Tool of honest work. Amira used this to clean rooms. Work that many consider inferior. Work that paid so little she probably worked double shifts just to pay rent. He looked around the lobby. But this inferior work didn't stop her from seeing another human being in need. Didn't stop her from risking everything to help a stranger. Her position didn't define her character. Her character defined her value. He placed the cloth back on the cart with reverence, as if it were a sacred object. This, he said, voice filling with emotion, is the difference between work and dignity. Work is what you do. Dignity is how you do it. And who you are when no one is watching. Absolute silence filled the lobby. Several guests were discreetly wiping tears. Khalid turned to Amira, who was crying silently, hands covering her face. Amira, he said in Arabic, voice soft, there's a Syrian proverb. I know it because I visited Damascus many times before the war. Min jarib al-mara, arafa halawat al-asal. He who tastes bitterness knows the sweetness of honey. She nodded through tears, recognizing the familiar proverb. You've tasted bitterness, Khalid continued, still in Arabic. War. Loss. Rebuilding life in a foreign country. Working below your qualifications. Being judged by language, by origin, by appearance. All that bitterness. He paused. But you didn't let it embitter your heart. You still saw a person in need and helped. That's sweetness. That's humanity. Amira couldn't speak, just shook her head, tears falling freely. Khalid turned to everyone gathered, staff, guests, security guards, all witnessing this moment none of them would ever forget. Starting today, he said, voice carrying through the marble lobby, every Al Rashid property will operate under a new fundamental principle. We'll judge guests by humanity, not appearance. We'll treat staff by dignity, not hierarchy. And any employee who violates this will face consequences. He looked directly at security cameras in the ceiling corners. These recordings will be reviewed. Every interaction of this incident. And they'll be used as training material at all our properties. So everyone sees exactly what happens when we forget that hospitality begins with humanity. Then finally, he turned to Todd Morrison one last time. Mr. Morrison, you know what's saddest about all this? It's not that you judged me. It's that you've done it many times before and no one stopped you. Because the victims of your judgment had no power to challenge you. They simply left, taking their humiliation with them, while you continued profiting from casual cruelty. Todd looked at his own shoes, completely destroyed. That, Khalid said softly, is true injustice. Not what happened to me today. But what happened to hundreds of people who couldn't defend themselves. He took a deep breath. For them, I make these changes. For every Amira who's still cleaning rooms instead of teaching. For every guest who is judged unfairly. For every human being who deserves dignity, whether or not they have money to buy respect. The lobby erupted in applause. It started with one guest, then another, then the entire crowd was clapping, some standing, some with tears in their eyes. Amira ran to Khalid and, forgetting protocols, hugged him tightly, sobbing on his shoulder. He hugged her back, this stranger who'd become a symbol of everything his company should represent. 18 months later, Khalid al-Rashid stood on the stage of the Grand Ballroom at Pinnacle Grand Hotel, the same hotel where he'd been humiliated, now completely transformed. Ladies and gentlemen, he said into the microphone, English still carrying an accent but confident now, welcome to the first annual Al-Rashid Hospitality Awards. An audience of 400 people applauded, managers from all 73 properties, board members, and special guests. In the front row, Amira Hassan sat in an elegant navy blue dress, no longer a cleaning uniform. At 39 years old, she was now Global Director of Cultural Inclusion, overseeing programs at all Al Rashid hotels. Beside her, Sophie Chen, promoted to general manager of Pinnacle Grand at 24, the youngest in company history. 18 months ago, Khalid continued, I arrived at this hotel as a test. I wanted to see how we treat people when we think they don't matter. I learned a painful lesson. He paused, eyes meeting Amira's. But I also learned about kindness. About courage. About a woman who risked her job for a stranger because it was the right thing to do. Applause filled the hall. Today, our hotels operate differently. We've hired 340 refugees and immigrants in qualified positions. We recognize foreign diplomas. We offer training in 23 languages. He smiled. And profits increased 34%. Because kindness isn't expensive. Cruelty is. Todd Morrison watched from home in Ohio, unemployed for 14 months. No hotel would hire him after the incident video went viral with 90 million views. His wife had filed for divorce. His children barely spoke to him. He'd lost everything for 30 seconds of cruel judgment. Richard Chun had accepted the transfer to Dubai, but retired 3 months later, unable to adapt. At 61, he worked as a consultant, earning a third of his previous salary. Mrs. Patterson still worked at Pinnacle, but as a floor supervisor. Everyday cleaning rooms alongside people she'd once managed, learning humility the hardest way. But Daniel Whitmore, the pharmaceutical executive who'd asked for security, had done something different. He'd sought out Khalid 6 months after the incident, offering genuine apologies. Then he'd started a mentoring program, helping immigrants in the pharmaceutical industry. You taught me, Whitmore had said, that we don't see people when we're rushing to get somewhere. Now I make it a point to see. On stage, Khalid called Amira. This year, the inaugural award for excellence in humanity goes to the person who showed me that dignity has no price. Amira went up, tears in her eyes as she received a crystal trophy. When I left Syria, she said into the microphone, voice breaking, I thought I'd lost everything. Home, career, identity. But I learned that who you are isn't where you were born or what language you speak. It's how you treat others when no one is watching. She looked at Khalid. This man gave me a second chance. But truly, I gave him something too. I reminded him that kindness still exists. Applause thundered. After the ceremony, Khalid found Amira on the terrace, watching the mountains. Do you think about Damascus? He asked in Arabic. Every day, she replied. But not with sadness. With gratitude. Because the journey brought me here. Do you plan to return? Maybe. When the war ends. But now, she smiled, I have work to do. 412 immigrant employees waiting for me to help them shine. Khalid nodded. You know why I chose you that day? Because I spoke Arabic? No. Because you saw me. When I was invisible to everyone, you saw a human being. That's rare. That's precious. 3 years later, Amira's program had inspired the entire industry. Hotels globally adopted similar policies. She'd given lectures at Harvard, the United Nations, the World Economic Forum. Todd Morrison never recovered. At 52, he worked in a parking lot, living alone in a small apartment, ghost of the man he'd once been. His son, visiting at Christmas, had asked, Dad, why did you do that? Todd had no answer that didn't reveal exactly who he'd always been. Khalid's true revenge wasn't destroying Todd. It was building something so bright it made Todd's cruelty irrelevant. He showed the world that success comes from lifting others up, not putting them down. As Khalid said in his final interview, Todd Morrison taught me what not to do. Amira Hassan taught me what to do. Choose who you want to be. If this story of judgment, redemption, and the triumph of kindness over prejudice touched your heart, subscribe to the channel for more stories that remind us that human dignity should never have a price, and that sometimes, the only difference between invisible and unforgettable is one person willing to see you when no one else does. Khalid learned a painful truth that day in the marble lobby. You can have all the money in the world, but if your character is poor, you'll always be the most miserable person in the room. And Amira proved an even more powerful truth. You can have less money, but if your heart is rich in compassion, you'll always be the most valuable person present. In the end, it wasn't the words in Arabic that left everyone in shock. It was kindness.